Happy to be here. I think I'm a little loud. Thanks for coming. We're going to cover a lot of ground today. When Susan picked up the phone and called and said, hey, we'd love for you to fill a billet and get up there and show us some tech and teach our members what you're about and the value you're bringing to the marketplace, I said, no problem. It only took us 21 years to sponsor it. Get up here. Thank you, Susan. Money well spent. No, in all sincerity, it is an honor and privilege. I basically grew up here. We started sponsoring FEI, I think, 21, 22 years ago. That being Ellen and myself, not this company. We'll come back to that. So it's really a pleasure to sit in front of you and share with you this exciting, strange, ever-changing world I'm in called emerging technology and how it applies to your space. This entire session is going to be built into two main parts. Hopefully everybody can see that. Let me know if you can't. We can get plenty of seats in the front row. Ellen. Anyway, we're going to start with education. You'll have to understand what we're talking about. I've got a lot of stuff to talk to you about, and I'm going to move very, very quickly. Please do not hesitate in interrupting me. It will be a very fluid session. I can't stand sessions where you sit there and fall asleep and head nod. So we're going to be moving around. I'm going to be inviting people up to the VR cave that's over there. Has anybody, raise their hands quickly, ever been in a VR cave? Nobody? One. Jared? 2, 3? Ellen, you don't count? 3? Okay. 4? Okay. Anything for the business side of it, or just pure fun? Yeah. Business. Interesting. Do you mind sharing?
It was actually.
It was your program.
Fair point. That doesn't count.
It was actually training.
Training?
It was on training individuals in a virtual room.
There you go. Studies suggest that training in virtual reality is absorbed almost north of an 80% clip relative to reading at 10 and in a classroom of 20. Why is that? It's because it's full immersion VR. You're in space. You're there rock climbing. You're there on Mount Everest. You're there in the Siemens laboratory. It's a complete different way of learning. That's why this is flying off the charts. We'll come back to that in a little bit. I want to give you a room orientation here. Shannon over there is going to be letting anyone and everyone that would like to go out there and experience a VR cave. These caves used to cost $500,000. Our firm built the first one for the government about 15 years ago to the tune of about $500,000. It now only costs about $699. You can get it at Home Depot plus a computer. So you can imagine where we've traveled in just 13, 14 years. We'll come back to that as well. Do not think that you're interrupting me or distracting me if you'd like to just get up and learn and stand and navigate. What we have for you to see, and you can do it at break, you can do it afterwards, you can do it in the presentation as well. Again, the more fluidity, the better for me, the more engagement, the better for me, for you, actually, as a takeaway. We have a warehouse that we've laser scanned, and we've digitized, and we've converted into virtual reality. We're doing this right now for some of the biggest people in the world, and we'll get to that here in a little bit, but it's an experience that probably none of you have had, except you, because you've been in my cave, Mr. Steele, where you're standing in a warehouse in the middle of Dubuque, Iowa, and metadata is wrapped around in that environment. You can stand there, you can teleport around, and let me just digress for a second. Teleporting around is going to be much different if you, and a lot of people have been in there, than the traditional VR where you find yourself falling through a floor and it makes you nauseous. This design and the technique is much different. You'll just teleport around to various different areas. You click a button, you'll see a video, you'll learn about dock levelers. You click a button, you'll see a sensor on an overhead door or temperature, humidity, all of that metadata, which is actually in the facility right now, in Dubuque, you can experience in this room right now. Just start putting the pieces together, and that's how the world is going to change as we train globally and really maximize our communication efforts. On this table here, this is an older VR set. This is what they call a mobile VR set. This is a laser scanner. These laser scanners used to cost about $150,000. Now you can get that for about $18. It takes about 1.5 million measurements a second. These are sample sensors we'll talk about as well, and we'll bounce over here to the rig also. Before we really jump into the two-part session here, when I was talking to Susan about this, I wanted to make sure that you all walk away with something. It's one thing to learn about a technology. It's one thing to learn about a new code from, lease accounting or wherever it is, but it's another thing to have the tool kit where you can walk into a future employer, current employer, consultant, whatever it is, and say, I'm in the throes of understanding and learning how IoT is going to transform our world. The IoT marketplace next year is going to be $1 trillion. The IoT marketplace in 2025 is estimated by McKinsey upwards of $11 trillion. How many people in the room, raise your hands, are doing IoT in any capacity in their business worlds? Anyone? That's why we have this session. That's exactly right. First of all, thank you, Susan, as well as the entire Education PD board. I'm going to leave people out. Frank Cesario, Marty, Burke, lots and lots of friends. Yes, thank you all for bringing us up here. Again, I'm Kuehl, father of 3, partner with David Proctor of 20-some odd years in commercial real estate. About 10 years ago, we started a company called II2A. II2A was a software company that was taking what is occurring in the commercial real estate space, which is the commoditization of our business to a degree when it comes to data, and figuring out how we can become of more greater value to our clients. So we built the software. That platform then a couple years ago merged with DMI. 2 years ago we merged with DMI. They're out of Dubuque. DMI was one of the, and still is, one of the foremost sensor companies in the world right now. Very deep ties with the Marine Corps. We do a lot of laser scanning and what's called voxelation, which basically means if I'm going to change the size of the Humvee, how many Humvees am I going to be able to get in the ship? I don't want to have to change the ship if I change the Humvee, if you get my drift. So we do a lot of spatial measurements vis-a-vis laser scanning. This is our main tool. This is actually the starting point. This is the laser scanner. It sits on a pod, you hit a button, spins around, gives you 5 main things very quickly. It gives you RGB, so it gives you a color picture as it measures a million measurements a second. Now, granted, it is line of sight. So if you wanted to do this entire room, you have to be on this side or that side of the column, but then you just register the scans and you get a full environment from just this scanner itself. It also gives you thermal. So imagine being in a facility or any environment and you want to measure the thermal issues, whether it's an electrical panel. Insurance companies now are running around and doing this so that they can, as opposed to a field survey, if you will, they can just send a laser scanner around and they can see that they can measure the distance between the sprinkler heads and the racks. They can check the thermal heat signatures on the electrical panels. It's now all being automated, obviously, through technology. And the last is it gives you depth. So this is the only technology outside of photogrammetry, which we'll talk about a little bit as well, that you have the ability of measuring a point cloud. So because it takes billions and billions of points, you can literally take anywhere in the room the measurement and distance. So think about the amount of travel time, think about the amount of efficiencies that can be gained by sending a laser scanner somewhere to data capture an environment. We'll get into that workflow here in a little bit, and how efficient that has become. We project that the architectural engineering and laser scanning companies, industries, verticals are going to start merging in the very near future because they're sort of overlapping the deliverables that are going together. Quickly, I talked about how DMI came to be. 2 software companies merged. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. Dan, our new partner, is not here. Nate, my CTO, is actually with the Marine Corps down in Florida right now. What we specialize in is really bringing these various emerging technologies together into one. It's all fun and wonderful to have all these little disparate type of technologies, whether that's VR and scanning and sensors. But then how do you lever that to actually add value? Come on in, Frank. Everybody, this is Frank Cesario. He's a Leo. Leo. As I mentioned, lots of experience in the military. If you're DMI, I should say Design Mills founded prior to our merger. And then Intel Innovator of the Year. We've built lots of different innovative technologies, and we're blessed to have Intel as a core partner of ours. And we were awarded again last year, one of the Innovators of the Year. I'm going to go through these logos just quickly here because I'm going to touch on them throughout the entire session because we're doing a lot of work with all of them. Jim's back, so welcome. Another friend of the family. I know, it's like the quieter you are, the worse it's going to be. Prologis is the largest landlord in the world, 1.7 billion square feet. We've been engaged to develop, deploy, test, and implement an IoT smart warehouse for their billion square feet. They project roughly 2% of all GDP flows through their facilities annually. You'd be amazed. We could spend 3 days talking about what they're doing. We do a lot with John Deere. John Deere is fundamentally flipping the way that they even look at chairs. They're looking at chairs as a service where they put a sensor underneath the chair, and now they just pay each time when you sit in the chair. So they don't actually even own the chairs anymore. It's called chairs as a service. We're doing a lot with Joe Carroll Energy. These sensors here are specifically from that initiative. I should say just right here, these sensors. I'll pass all these around here as well in a little bit. Lots of utility use cases there. Boeing, Iowa State, and where am I? Leica are in a combined project that has to do with oxidation. I don't know a lot about that. I just know that when Nate boils it down to the simpleton, he says it's making sure a box fits in another box, and they just reference. We're doing a lot of virtual reality training for General Motors. I just had this conversation outside. They have big robotic arms that if the person that's navigating and managing these robotic arms will step 1 foot off to the side, they literally get killed. So what they've done now is they've done 2 things. One is they've taken 3D models of the environment that they're training in and created training simulations in VR, as we just mentioned. What they've also done, which is actually more apropos, and same with Siemens, is they've taken the real world through laser scanning and converted that into virtual reality. So you're standing there right next to the robotic arm, looking at the robotic buttons and everything else as if you're in the space. That's all VR training is truly transformative. Siemens, as I just mentioned, we do a lot of their conversion of 3D models for all of their conferences, all their trade shows. So they have a lab. It's a biosafety level lab 4. I think if anybody was at the MDII event a couple years ago, you might have been in that. I don't know who might have joined that. But they used to pay tens of thousands of dollars to ship this $25 million lab around to their conferences. Now they just ship this. And frankly, they get a better response because the millennials, the iGen, I guess is that what they're called? Are they called iGen now, Frank? I don't even know what they are. I feel like my 13-year-old's in this space already. They don't want to really touch anything unless it has some technical splash to it, some wow. We'll talk about why human resources and all of the recruitment groups want to get into this as well for all their job fairs and highlighting their operations and highlighting their network. That's been the eureka moment that we've seen, and we'll obviously talk about that as well. We do a lot with the Marine Corps. We do even more with Anixter. I can talk about that. We've worked with them for 8 years on various different levels. Intel's a huge partner of ours. They give us all the code for all the new technology, whether that's RealSense and everything else, and we crack that with and for them. And as you saw in our write-up, we're taking the most recent innovation, which was that crop duster, the virtual reality crop duster, and they asked us to commercialize that. So who tells Intel no? Okay, Leica Geosystems is the largest laser scanner and basically considered the original laser scanner. We are lucky or cursed, whichever it is, to be the ones that are writing all of the code relative to converting a laser scan point cloud into virtual reality. And to the point which we think is going to occur this quarter, you could have that in Singapore measuring a facility. They have this for utility lines. They do this for cliff walls out in Nevada, so they can study if a rock falls, how far it's going to go down. The applications are endless. All the fires out in California now are all laser scanned. They're laser scanning where the fire started. They're studying it for blame, et cetera, et cetera. We write the code on that conversion for all of their equipment. And the reason I say whether it's a curse or a blessing is because we're a $4 billion company and we're a small shop, so we can do what they tell us. You know, that is fun. A little bit about who we are in DMI. Any questions before we kind of jump in here?
Yeah, CJ, what are you guys doing for the Marine Corps? You just kind of glossed over on pretty much.
The Department of Navy voxelization. So the Humvee we're extending the useful life of the Humvee to 2040. Frankly, it should have been done 40 years ago, in my opinion, but they want to extend it to 2040, which means every piece of new equipment that comes in there, they have to laser scan it, 3D model it, and test it in the current configuration of the Humvee. And then if something's going to go outside the Humvee, new plates, new armor, new tires, new turret, and whatever it is, then you have to take that and put that in the bigger box to make sure it fits in the ship or wherever it's going to be transported, semi or whatever. So we're doing all of that. We basically have 10, 12,000 different Humvee parts over a 10-year period, laser scan, 3D model, so that they can go through that process seamlessly. And I don't know what we're doing now. They're down there again. Again, I am by no means the expert in all of this. As you all know, I started my career in real estate. Now in the last 3 years, all of a sudden I'm talking to you about IoT. Because literally I have spent probably 3/4 of my time entrenched in IoT, in the applications for such, which most importantly, to your organizations. The first part is we're going to talk about education. Again, I've covered a lot of ground just where we are now. But these are a few of the topics that we want to ultimately touch on. Some of these are pitfalls. Can you see that? I'm sorry. Some of these are pitfalls. Some of these are challenges. Some of these are Hawthorne effect. Is everybody spelled it correct? I told you it was me. Anybody familiar with the Hawthorne effect? Yep. No. We're seeing that everywhere right now. And it's actually making our return on investment / return on innovation even more challenging to compute. Hawthorne effect means that if we're all fork truck drivers in a warehouse and all of a sudden we put a sensor on top of that fork truck and you know there's a sensor there, you're going to be doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing on that fork truck moving forward. So there's an automatic, immediate gain of efficiency just by the employee or the person understanding that they're being watched. That's the Hawthorne effect. So we're having difficulty now trying to measure the baseline from what it was prior to sensor and technology to where it is post.
Is that a good thing for Hawthorne effect?
It is a good thing, but it's difficult for one who's selling a product and or a new workflow to say, no, that's because of us. No, my employees are just being more efficient all of a sudden. Okay.
Well, but is the issue the old state to the brand new day one Hawthorne, or that new thing and then moving forward? Which is the real issue? The new Delta.
Bottom line is, where's the real baseline?
Yeah.
You just want to move the baseline.
Yeah.
Expectations, we hear this all the time. People are thinking that they're going to be solving the world quickly with sensors and with blockchain and AI and robotic process automation, and we're kind of touching all of these. People have had nothing but pain through software and technology. It's almost taboo to bring in innovative concepts and ideas such as software and technology because we all have gashes in our sides over the years and stuff that has gone sideways. And then you got to pipe it back together and pay even more. And it's such a difficult space unless you have a locked, guaranteed product that's going to fundamentally do something quickly. IoT is still in the evolution stage, which is why we go through a lot of that. Challenges. We'll talk about enterprise value at length. Time's very, very important. I talked about digitization. We'll talk about that in the next slide as well. Time, real as good now. What's happening, and the reason that we're here right now, is because $500,000 for a VR, now $18,000. You used to have to pay thousands of dollars for sensors because there were very few of them. And you didn't know what kind of network to bring them back on. This prototype could make us hundreds of millions of dollars, and it was designed by my CTO's 14-year-old son on his 3D printer. It snaps on to a recloser on a telephone pole. That telephone pole drops. It gets notified to the sensor, to the cloud, back to the guy's whatever, palm, computer, iPad, geolocates it, tells him 13-minute drive to go fix that fuse that was blown. You buy a car, electricity, whatever. We'll get into that as well because one of the themes in the second half is innovation really starts with you. And when a 14-year-old can 3D print various different beta types, you can see how we morph this over time. And I'll pass these around here a little bit. That means the door's open for all of us. That was a eureka moment for me as well when I saw his son doing that. we're going to touch on all of these here in a little bit. And the other point with time, by the way, if it's not real time, it doesn't matter. Everything has to be real time these days. The connectivity and the ability to literally reach the corners of the globe in a matter of seconds is what's expected. I'm going to walk through the digitization process. Before we get kind of started on this, does anybody have any questions so far? Does anybody want to jump into VR Cave and see what that looks like, or do you want to wait until the end? 6 1/2 again, I take no pride in ownership. The digitization process, everybody's talking about this in some capacity. You have to start somewhere. Whether you're, I don't know, Cisco Systems or Intel or Verizon, and you've got billions and billions of dollars of budget. It's just a much different world that we're in. They've got R&D divisions, they've got innovative divisions. That's the whole point and purpose of that. Otherwise they die. They just get consumed like BlackBerry and they're gone if they're not innovative. We have to approach it differently being a small business. We have to provide and add value to all of you, small and mid-market. Sometimes all of mostly private. This is the process. So how do you digitize? Does everybody understand what the term digitize means? Any questions on that? It basically means you're taking the real world and you're converting that into a digital environment. Does that make sense? It starts with a framework, as we just discussed, of a laser scanner. Yeah.
I'm sorry, but from, we have used a real world example of,
Okay.
I know you said warehouses, et cetera, but, you know, from a finance perspective, what are you digitizing for the CFO? Digitizing?
Okay, so let's just say you have a warehouse that has 35 fork trucks. And you've got those 35 plus or minus fork trucks in 74 locations across the globe. And you have each one of those fork trucks has a sensor and one little gateway. And it comes to quarter close, and you hit a button, and all 634 fork trucks are registered instantaneously, and it flows right into your general ledger. Would that save you all time and money, effort? Absolutely. Internal and external audits are going to be fundamentally changed. The digitization of the environment, the workflow, each CFO here, to answer your question, has an operation. They have a product, they have a service, they're doing something. There are trucks on the road, there's fixing stuff, they're building stuff. That's what gets digitized to streamline operations. So IoT, just take a second, it's a great question, IoT. In few words, what does IoT mean to you all? You want me to start? I would say sensors. Throw it out there.
Subscription.
Subscription.
Predictability.
That seems negative though.
Only if
But
you're
the
paying.
ERP
I mean, if you're paying.
Real time.
Real time.
Predictability, prediction.
There you go. Now you get word. Well, or prescriptive.
Are you considering RFID part of IoT?
Absolutely. Absolutely. A sensor is a sensor. Yep. The biggest, from our perspective, and we'll talk about all the use cases that we're utilizing right now across the globe, we consider sensor and IoT to basically be CPI, continuous process improvement. Why is that? Continuous process improvement means that you're doing something, in layman's terms, my terms, CPI terms, you're doing something over and over again, which is why when we started our software company, what we do is pretty repetitive, and viewed as pretty repetitive. So we wanted to create a platform by which we could measure the time that it takes, or the activity that it does, and then improve on that, hence continuous process improvement. I really don't know how you have CPI without sensors, frankly. Doesn't matter what it is. I could have PLS. I could have humidity sensors in your breezeway, and I could tell you when a front is coming, and proactively, your local managers will get a notification that would say humidity is about to spike. Get your mop and go wipe the breezeway. You're going to go back to your insurance carrier and say, hey, risk engineer, I'm proactive and predictive. My number one claim is slipping and falling. I want my policy to be less. It's the way you think about it. That's for any fast food chain, which we're doing right now. For any retail operation. We're putting
Total all HVAC, right? They can do that.
anything.
Well,
Send-
you might be able to do it offline, but it certainly improves the sample size, where I can get a lot more data, a lot more quickly, rather than doing it manually. I mean, it automates the process in real time, right?
Correct.
I mean, you can still go inside of a lab and take the temperature 3
Sure.
times a day,
Sure.
rather than online
Sure.
continuously and predict when things are gonna burn out and change.
Absolutely. But if I had 9,600 Burger King restaurants like they do,
No doubt.
and I had a front coming and it hit 600 of them, are you gonna call 600? Or are you gonna have a sensor notify the local manager, grab them, right? So this is stuff that, Nick, in your world, I think would apply very closely. You're aggregating all of the claims, data, and information. I would think that ultimately it flows seamlessly into your world and to sensor solutions for future claims, or whatever future claims are. Because you know when claims are occurring in more frequency.
Well, especially where they happen and then the predictive nature after you get a lot of data.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first column that we go through, and the reason that I'm showing you this process is because you have to capture the environment, and this is why they call it reality capture. If anybody's really interested in reality capture, go to a website called SPAR3D. It's an organization. They have the most wickedly cool technology that's out there. LiDAR planes, LiDAR helicopters. They're using drone flamethrowers in India to burn down shoes that are stuck up in all the telephone lines. I mean, wild stuff that you can't even think about. SPAR3D, and you just get onto the website and learn about that. So the first column is you gotta get your environment, right? So you can do that in lots of different ways. You can bring the data ingestion through whatever, old means, old archaic, or you can bring it through sensors, you can bring it through laser scan. You're building the framework. And the reason laser scanning in our world is important is because having a list of sensors of this room isn't as helpful as I'm standing in the room and I see the sensors right over, right over here by the heater, and I can tell that the sensor keeps going off each time the heat kicks on. Can we just move the sensor? It's not that there's a fire, it's the fact that I'm standing here and saying we put it in the wrong spot. You have to have a context for where those sensors are going to be. Otherwise, you're going to get a laundry list. We work at a company called Daintree. GE Lighting bought them, and now Current and GE Current's on the blocks with AIP. GE still with lighting, it's just a whole mess. But the GE's getting out of that business to about $100 million because their interface with Daintree, which is the sensors in the lights, is really inept. And we've tried to work with it for a few years with Anderson, their previous client, who was the first client with them before they grew to $100 million. That's a whole other fun story. And they're just not winning. And the reason they're not winning is because they have no context, in our opinion, which is why we're meeting with them in New York in the hedge fund, is because they don't have a framework by which you can visualize the information. So the lights might be telling you something, but when you go to the website and you look at it, it's just a list of data. You're like, what does that mean, right? What does HP 64732 mean? Then what do you got to go in the warehouse and look for that? You have to have a context. That's why laser scanning is really important, so you understand where it sits. Again, if you're standing in that virtual reality environment right now, you'd be standing there, you'd be looking at the sensors that are in the warehouse, seeing in real time the temperature, seeing in real time how many times that door has gone up and down, which will change a whole lot of workflow moving forward. The next layer is you got to get it somewhere. So it comes into data and process management. You got to have it go somewhere, that data. And then advanced visualization. This is how it's done. How do you want that information to come out? Do you want the information to come out and notify the technician in the field if the sensor dropped and they got to go fix it? Do you want to run the analytics from your desktop? Or you want to start doing some training virtually or globally or however it is? And this is just the mobile trainer. This is the full immersion VR. We built a full immersion VR for the Executive Briefing Center for Siemens. So now they take all of their 3D labs and they fly all the executives into the Buffalo Grove headquarters. They sit in a big room with a TV as big as the entire wall. And they have them stand in these headsets and they experience these labs, if you will, in VR. Yeah, go ahead.
So jumping ahead to 4, which is engineering and real estate, I was in the architecture, engineering, and construction business for a long time. When I left, everybody, all the construction companies were looking for BMI, business management information.
Yep.
So if you built a facility, well, with digitized information. But I don't, where is it now? You know, I mean, I didn't see any.
Where's BIM,
where
is the question, where's BIM modeling?
BIM modeling, is that advanced further now?
No.
We haven't done visualization for that.
No.
Because I could see, I don't know, you could see the building, you could see all the equipment in the building.
Yeah. The reason BIM,
Now, the light would go off on
Yeah.
the chart and say, okay, well, this chiller needs something.
yeah, it's the exact same thing that occurred with Siemens and Anixter in two separate experiences, and I think in this industry as a whole. BIM modeling is a very clunky, very heavy, very time consuming. You gotta go in, bring in the files and bring in it, and I'm not saying it's any lighter over here, but it's a model. It's not the real environment.
But you would start with that, and then it would evolve. I don't know.
Well, the BIM modeling is like 3D modeling software, where then you're attaching documents and information to it.
Because when you say digital, I always think analog. The opposite of digital is analog in my mind.
Okay, long habits?
No, just real
Not
world
complicated.
stuff, like your watch hand is analog and your, this watch is digital. So what it means is digital means a computer can work with it. A computer can't work with analog data. A computer has to work with digitalization. But you're focusing on the visualization because the computer is taking digital information and using it to be visual.
I guess that's the way I look at it.
Yeah. So that's what I was struggling.
I don't know if I answered your question.
I just
Well,
wonder
if it
about, it
wasn't-
seems like if you own a big building or if you have a lot of offices, there's something there here that applies.
Yeah. Great example, in the basement of Anixter's global headquarters in Glenview, they have a big lab where they bring customers in, not the executive briefing center like Siemens, but they have a big lab. They've got all their technology. And if you know Anixter, they sell everything. I mean, they got a book this big. Right now, they're selling cameras literally every second. People are buying them off the charts for cities. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. I want to make sure I'm not killing time. I don't even have a clock or what time is it?
4:09.
4:09? Okay. All right. Stop talking. Where were we? Anixter. Yes. They would fly people in from around the world. They want to touch and feel the cameras, you know, because cameras are just so hot, video analytic, and I mean, it is just millions of cameras are going up a day right now around the globe. And what they did is they elected to, why pay for that expense? Why not just send this for the salesperson as if you're standing in that room, and you can just go over there and hit a button, and poof, it pops out, and now you got the cut sheet, you got the cost, you got the reviews, now you just teleport over here, you're looking at something else. So it's taking that real world environment and digitizing it, and using that to communicate and collaborate around, which is what a lot of people are doing right now. So moving on here, who's a value to the organizational applications? This is what we're going to work on in the second half. On the back of your sheet, you'll see it's blank. You know, kind of awkward. You're supposed to fill it in with color codes. We're going to get to that in a little bit. The reason that it's blank is because your space, and we're going to talk about innovation starting with you here in a little bit, is much different than any other space. You all as financial executives look at your workflow in an organization much different than a real estate director, an operations guy. You all have different roles. You see things differently. The ones that you see how it flows. What's making me money, what's not making me money. So we're going to talk about all the benefits to you here in a little bit. But sales and operations engineering, real estate training, marketing, maintenance, and environmental health and safety all have massive applications that we're currently utilizing out in the marketplace. The why is pretty straightforward. Driving decisions much faster, right? So you can see the pictures in 1,000 words, Nick. Now we can all collaborate around that really quickly. Real-time analytics. Why is it doing this? What can you change? People are looking for marketplace differentiation. We talked about HR. I couldn't believe it. When we laser scanned Anixter's 250,000 square foot facility down in Houston, HR came up and asked if they could have one of those in the front row. Like, what? Of course you can. Go right ahead. It was just their facility, teleporting around. Then the operations gentleman came up and said, I would like that there too. They put a room in their distribution location just for VR. Why? Well, how do you make wire and cable sexy to the IG? You don't. They don't want to work for you, they want to work for Facebook or Snapchat or blah, blah, blah. You throw them in that, and you say, go around the facilities. Now put our location in Singapore. Boom, now you're there, you're teleporting. They're looking for the new angle of connectivity with these youngsters who literally wake up and reach over and grab, a wearable or a device or something. Market differentiated, predictive maintenance cycles, ballast acid usage, asset gamification. These are all just basic logical sensor technologies that can be deployed very, very quickly. Please, Mark.
I saw this on TV. I don't know if I'm asking, is it reality where this virtual reality is giving some kind of tactile or haptic feedback so you can see, not only look at the camera, but you can kind of feel it with a glove on? I mean,
Yeah,
is that reality or is that?
that is reality.
That is
Yeah. And my smirk will come to reason and understanding why, because the porn industry is driving 50% of all virtual reality development. 50%. Anybody see the movie Ready Player One? I know Frank did. Anybody else see Ready Player One? Nobody? Wow. Yeah. Remember when he's in a haptic suit? Yeah, it's not too far away. So haptic gloves, you touch that and you feel it. The glove tightens up and you feel it. That's why the porno industry is driving haptic suits. We don't need to delve into that, but you understand why. And in all sincerity, 50% of all virtual reality developments. And in fact, we've talked to them about getting haptic gloves to work in interface with us over there. That's what I tell people.
Here, pay attention. Just a bunch of questions.
That's for after class. I'm being filmed. Come on, home. It doesn't have to be complicated. IoT, and I'm going to show you here in a second why people think it's really complicated. Let me just jump to that right now. That's why. I could zoom in on all that, but what's the point? There's 1,000 companies up there. Something to write down. You all have this presentation on the discs. It's something to write down that I've found over the last few years is Matt Turp. And I've reached out and blogged with him many times. It's at Matt Turp. He's with this company called FirstMark. He wrote a blog and a big IoT write-up 13, 14, 16, and 18. Fascinating storyline. He'll talk about the investments, how many people have come and gone, the future of it, the impact of it, on and on and on. I left this on here specifically to call him out because I've been very impressed with the information that he's been providing, really open and free. But I'm going to jump back here for a second as well. Sorry about that. Any questions? So again, let's keep it simple for a second here, okay? We develop sensors, we develop gateways, we develop the cloud, we develop SaaS, we can do visualization, we do this all. There are very, very few people in the world that can actually take you from the left-hand side to the right-hand side. We're not sure, frankly, if there's anybody our size. Intel probably could, Siemens or Cisco probably could. But there's a reason that we're being pulled into the biggest of these organizations to solve really big problems. And because our guys are really smart, they've been doing it a long time. One of the first people actually to convert and merge IoT and virtual reality. But let's get back to it. A sensor. I'll pass this out. A sensor can be anything. It can measure anything. These sensors are prototypes for the utility company. And these are 3D printed. If you break it, you buy it. Yeah. $99.99 right there. It doesn't have to be complicated, sensors. What's complicated about IoT and the application and deployment is the fact that I think the industry is usually complicated, and really what we're selling are ideas. What we're selling are, what does your organization do, what does your workflow need that you see happen over and over again that you can automate?
Yes.
I don't know all of those cases in your world. I'm not the CPA. But I can go through a few of them, which we'll go through in a little bit. I'm not the accountant, I'm not the CFO. That's not my core. But I do know my core of real estate, and I have applied everywhere. I'll just give you one example. Jumping ahead a little bit. This is a If you put it on an overhead door at any of your facilities, it's going to tell you how many times it opened, how long it was open. That's basically it. But people don't recognize the value that comes from that. Here's where it gets even more wild. You already have this in most of all your facilities in your overhead doors. Because you got a sensor right at the bottom there, by ADT, that's telling you when the door's secure. But people don't even know, which is why we're here talking about empowering you with thinking differently. Don't even know that you can just reach out to ADT and say, give me a report each month. I want to know what's going on with my 100 doors in my facility. Why is that? Okay, here's some examples. If I know that these 3 doors right here are getting utilized a couple 100% more than the other 20, what does that mean? Call it out. What does it mean?
Bottlenecks, downtime.
Okay, downtime, bottlenecks, workflow, not maximizing that balanced asset usage. Keep going. That's work. Sales traffic closest to the bathroom for the truckers, right? Whatever it is. Smoke area, whatever it is, right? Yeah, well, keep going. What else? How about the fact that each time a semi comes up here and bangs against that, it's going to cost you by the time you're finished probably $25,000 to $40,000 on each one of these dock doors to fix not only the doors but the levelers and the concrete around it when your lease finishes. Huge liability that you're building up that you don't even know about. I mean, you're just not thinking about it. You could know about it. But everybody said, oh, if I got a sensor on the door, I then know. And I can send everything down this way or send everything down that way. Here's something else. Why are my maintenance people coming out here and maintaining all 100 doors when these are the 3 that need it? I'm blindly paying for maintenance on my facility. Whatever it is. It's going to fundamentally change that you negotiate lease contracts, maintenance contracts, from just an overhead door sensor. This thing costs about $1.50.
That's what it is. So something like that, like an asset identification,
Yep.
something like that costs a lot.
You need a gateway and this.
Because I'm thinking from an equipment guy, and I've got a certain number of, say, scales,
Or
and
fork trucks, or
and
whatever.
my customer says, well, a real world application is my customer says,
Okay.
I don't have all those scales anymore, I should be paying for them on my service contract.
The button.
And they don't know where they are, and you know, you put it on when you ship it, and you know where it is all the time.
Yep.
And that's a huge value to my customer as well, because then they know where their stuff is. I'm telling them where their stuff is.
Yeah. Fundamentally will change supply chain, just these sensors. Fundamentally, blockchain, all of it. Because it all begins with a sensor. I've talked to a lot of food companies about this. A little side note, funny. I've even talked to railroad companies about this because we do a lot of laser scanning. And as you know, railroad companies are always focused on, is this perfect? Is it wrong? Is it this way? Or the railroad tracks? They're laser scanning everything. Well, we don't necessarily want to know that yet. Oh. We don't necessarily want to know that the food was tainted in our place. So those sensors can stay away until we're forced to have. Well, the FDA just came out a few months ago and said, if you're a certain size, you have to have verification sensors some way to understand whether the food got loose, whether the food got hot, or whatever ended up happening. Most of the food companies we meet with are like, we'll just go ahead with it. Because that's directly pointing liability to you. So it's one thing to have the technology. It's one thing to be able to deploy it. It's not a cost thing. It's a, I don't want that exposure thing. Same with the railroad. Millions and millions and millions of data that they're aggregating. And when that train goes off and there's a spill, you don't want to data mine that and say, it was sitting right there. It just said it was off 3 degrees. So they just let that data pile up. I don't know. Yeah.
Do you have a sensor you can attach to my kids?
Yeah, actually I did. We'll talk about that later. Yes?
So far you talked about attaching the sensors to something, a piece of equipment or a door or whatever. Are we at the point now where they're manufacturing the sensors right into the equipment?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Great example. Dock levelers. Okay, so the truck pulls up, we got a dock leveler there. Goes through the exact same protocol of maintenance. You as tenants or occupiers are blindly paying for all of them. Probably because you have a contract with your landlord that says you're responsible for maintaining HVAC doors and dock levelers. Okay. But what happens when you're Kellogg's, a real world example, when we were meeting with them just a few months ago, and you've got 30,000 backboards across the globe, and you're blindly paying millions of dollars in maintenance each year? You don't have a clue. Have you ever been to any one of those warehouses? I mean, it's as far as you can see just cereal sitting there, and you're like, wow, just sitting there. Now, they fundamentally flipped it when they go to a landlord and said, we're going to put a sensor. And by the way, all these sensors are being deployed at the event, which is really fascinating. It's not that the companies want or have or are even interested in creating a budget to push that out there. It's each time they do a new lease, there are traditional transactional expenses that go along with that. You're going to have your build-out allowance, you're going to have your free rent, you're going to have legal, you're going to have brokerage commissions, you're going to have blah, 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 and now you're going to have IoT. What is the IoT package you want to push out there? And in the future, it's going to look like this. It's going to come like this. This is why it hasn't adopted in the commercial side fast enough, because of that landscape that I just showed you a second ago. But this is what it's going to be. And in fact, in March, April, May, we're going to be deploying the Smart Warehouse box. Because this is all you want. Just get started. Going back to the word slide again, success. Success in our book means you have one sensor in your facility, which means you have completed the complete pipe for that one sensor input. It's all downhill from there. You just get one sensor in there. Everybody thinks you got to have this massive solutions, massive roadmap. You don't even know what you don't know. We don't even know what you don't know when you start sensoring up your facility. There's thousands and thousands of sensors now. You can only imagine. You go shopping over Christmas, and what about all the wearables that you have these days? I mean, they're just endless. So those are just
So
wearables.
100,000 square foot warehouse, somebody's got a 100,000 square foot building.
Correct.
Buy something like that on a box or a solution.
That's
We're
correct.
gonna take it to some IT guy who's going to program it up.
No, there's no programming.
There's no program.
No, we backhaul what's called a LoRaWAN network. That's our way of saying, don't worry about being in your network. Don't worry about being with your IT people. Don't worry about, this is just a secure 900 to 915 megahertz bandwidth where you're literally bringing the sensor back to you at your desktop.
But you're going to get all this data and use it to figure out what to do with that data.
That's what you need to do. Yep.
And that's the
Correct.
So the
That's what we're
solution is going to be
gonna-
relatively expensive.
Yes. Hardware is a race to the bottom. It just, I mean, I can give you an RFID chip for less than a penny right now.
So what are you guys selling? Are you guys selling?
Oh, we can get to that later. I'm not going to sell anything.
No, but I'm thinking about this. No, I'm not saying you're selling this, but you're coming in and saying, I need to teach you how to program this, I need you how to use this, that kind of stuff. No.
No. Just like this. You're going to have a little gateway. You're going to put it in your rafter. It's just going to sit there. It's going to be plugged in. Where else?
And any data I want to.
Any data you want, you're going to take this over to your door. You're going to put it on there. You're going to go back to your desk. You're going to hit the button. You're going to register. And you're going to see when that door goes up and down. And that's it. It's all downhill from there. Because once you have that pipe, you can put 1,000 sensors out and you don't change anything else. The pipe stays the same. The gateway stays the same. The most difficult part is just getting the first one out there.
I've got those things on the windows in my comfort.
Sure. Yeah. Yep.
And then they tell me when something's open, tell me this
Yep.
little box.
Yeah. Yeah.
See, tell us about the gateway.
Gateways?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It says it's developed customized to the requirement.
Yeah, right.
Is that like a router or? is it-
That's right. That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. So in here, I don't know which one it is. In there, one of those boxes is all gateways, right? Let's just leave it at that. One of those boxes is all gateways. right?
Take your word for it.
Yeah. Gateways. A little bit, Dan, about what you asked, and I'll just kind of answer it differently. And you know, what time is it, by the way? 4:20? All right, I'm going to take just a couple more minutes, and then we'll take a break, because then we're going to jump into really focusing on the backside of the page, which is the various different enterprise value silos. So to answer that question quickly, sensors, there's going to be millions of them. It doesn't matter. It could be RFID, it can be temperature, humidity. As I just mentioned in the slide that you just saw a second ago, we put them into three main buckets. The main buckets that we put them in are activity environments and whatever you want to call it, event. That means that if somebody opened up a roof hatch on my building, I get notified immediately, because I've told my insurance company that I have real-time notification when anybody steps on the roof of my building. Big fall, death, policy issues with that, right? Environment, you want to know, as we mentioned, the humidity level, you want to know the water level, you want to know the temperature, any type of environment. Applications are all over. Really, we could talk for all day about that. And then activities, what we've been talking about, an opening and a closing. Okay. This is one of the main reasons why IoT has had difficulty. Back in 13, 14, they thought it was just going to take off like that. Then kind of Bitcoin and AI came along, and they were hot terms. How many people are using AI? Anybody get? A little bit? A little bit, okay. So one. Anybody RPA? Anybody touching RPA? No? Okay. So here, once again, we've got all these technologies that everybody's talking about, nobody's using them. What we focused on, just as a side note to what Lowell was discussing, was it can't be difficult. And no enterprise, nor are you going to add value when you go to your partners, your boss, whatever, and you say, I've got it. We're going to get all these sensors, we're going to send them out there. Oh, really? Excuse me, what's your ROI? Well, we're going to figure that out, right? Those aren't winning starting points, right? We're going to get there. We're going to make this sausage together, partner. Yes, right? So what we focused on, again, just to kind of touch on, Dan, what you were mentioning, we don't care about the sensors. We don't care about the gateways. We actually don't even care about the cloud. You can use all the various different clouds. We have a SaaS that's ubiquitous between all of them. It's a race to the bottom of these, and there's going to be billions of these. Right now, they say there's 5 per person on the planet. They say there's 50 billion sensors that are going to be out there in the future by the end of this decade. Yes?
So you don't have to worry on the cyber side. I mean, this is great, and I see even more applications, obviously, for what you're saying. But there's always that Internet of Things cyber intrusion aspect. So you're probably in that box where the customers may have to be more, and the OEM has to be more considerate of the cyber intrusion issues.
I think
Sensors with data,
yeah.
these activities, applications,
Right.
having your warehouse known to somebody else,
Right, so 2 things with that. Security is going to be huge with IoT, huge. One of the big things that we'll talk about here a little later on, if we don't run out of time, is I think a trend that everybody's seeing right now, that's kind of a scary trend. Once you realize that each one of these chairs has a sensor, there's a sensor up here measuring how many people went in the room so they can understand utilization rates of an office or a warehouse conference, whatever it is. The real question is, are you and do you have a right to privacy? That's going to be the biggest question, I think. Yes?
How about California has a privacy law?
I'm sorry?
California just came up with a privacy law.
Privacy law.
You
In
mentioned
California.
about right to
Yeah.
privacy.
Yeah.
California came up already with it. Other states are discussing it. There's something like GDPR,
Yep.
General Data Protection Regulation for Europe,
Yep.
including applicable to the UK. Canada has it, so who do you want to work with? Asia has it.
Right? And it's coming fast. And part of the issue is you're going to get in your car, you're being tracked everywhere you go. You go home, you got sensors, Alexa, you got this, you got this, you got this. You come here, and you know there are sensors here, and somebody says, oh, you're not, you were here. Well, that's not your right to know that information. Or is it? I don't know. Right? I see that being a big challenge in the future. Yeah.
But for example, I think this is great for obviously utilities, intelligent substations. This is all the examples that you're showing here. That works. It makes all the sense in the world, and I see a great opportunity. It's just how do you protect yourself from bad actors? And that's another. It's more than privacy; it's the bad actors. So it's the way you carve out the data that you're picking up from the sensors, that you visualize that somebody else doesn't intrude into your world through whatever cloud or whatever else. I mean, it's endless, the opportunities that it presents. It's just that the Internet of Things has always been scoured by how much do you want somebody trying to know how big your apartment is, it's privacy. But how about the safety of the anomaly detection of some breaker in a...
Well, and there's countless examples of stuff that you don't even know.
Yeah.
You know those little Roombas?
Yeah, the robots, I don't
Right? Do you know what the Roombas do?
Yeah.
You know what Roomba's selling now?
No.
Roomba is selling the average footprint of the average home.
Yes, right on.
Think about that. They're picking up how many square feet, where they're picking up the footprint of every single home that they're in, and pushing it back. Roomba, a stupid little vacuum. Right? This is a heat chart that Forrester gave us back in 2017. Anything in blue is actually what we're doing an extensive amount of. This is really self-explanatory. This is in your packet for you to review at your leisure as well. I'm not going to drill into this too much because I'm already running over a little late. I'm sorry. I'd love to take 5 minutes. We're going to get into the empowerment section, and then we're going to talk about how you all can walk away with specific use cases for your individual world relative to your clients and everything else. Now that we've gone through getting educated on emerging technologies. Thank you. Talk to you in 5. Thanks. Which is really the empowerment slide, and I want you all to walk away with lots and lots of different use cases that you can utilize and think about. I've talked to Susan about this. Obviously, in 2 hours, you're not going to be brought up to speed. I spend countless hours every day for the last 2.5 years trying to get up to speed. I can't osmose that to you in 2 hours. I'm doing what I can. But we're going to have to jump quickly because I'm sorry, running short. As we talked about, what we see as sort of this next industrial revolution is smart enterprise. Everybody understands that this is coming. What does this mean? We all felt it was too costly, too complicated. You saw the landscape slide previously. That's why it's too complicated. We're doing what we can on our side, just a little spoof on DMI, as we talked about a little bit on the rig, where you're going to turn around and whatever the solution is, it's going to be the same gateway and a set of sensors. And this thing's going to cost $150 and you get it out there. That's the future of where sensor technology is in our opinion. We've talked about the workflow. You all have. Am I missing a sensor, Ellen?
Well, use your sensor to find a sensor.
Drop the mic.
It's no big deal, it only costs $1.50.
Right? It's the IP though, Marty. You're killing Smalls. Mike?
The problem is the more of this stuff you can bring home, the more you're creating your own target as far as, everything's being recorded now.
Fair point. I am on film. I'm being recorded twice.
No, so I'm saying, though, with this key and with these other, with Alexa and all this stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Alexa's in your, Alexa is now coming out with canned lights. So you got to do have a thing. It's going to be your lights. Anyway, I digress.
The more you bring in your house, the more knows about it.
Oh, of course, yeah. I have a good friend of mine who's working on a technology, I'll call him a good friend of mine, where it's a fabric that you put in any type of clothes, and you can put your cell phone in there, and your cell phone has no signal reception, whatever. So when you think it's off, and you know it's off, but it's still tracking you, yeah, so a lot of changes going on out there. Anyway, moving on quickly here, challenges, pitfalls, things that we've seen. No one department traditionally has this role, this initiative, whether it's VR, IoT, just any company that you've been in. Anybody raise your hand if you had an IoT or VR department or budget. Okay, moving on. Makes my point. So, we talked about how many people have touched it. You understand where this is going is just to be aware of what's happening, to understand where this is going, to understand the impact, to be that innovator. And as we talk about here, starting to think about, we're going to have to put that in the budget somewhere. We have so many meetings, and I'm telling you, every single meeting we have, half of the time is spent educating people as we went through the first half. And the other half is, where's the budget? So we find ourselves like a river navigating through each one of these organizations. Who's got budget? Who's got budget? Marketing. Marketing's got budget. All right, this is what we're going to do in marketing, right? Okay. And it's a challenge because it's not a traditional silo. It's an emerging technology. So moving on, the whole purpose of the second half is really to get you all to start thinking like innovators. And when I mean thinking like an innovator, I mean thinking in the manner of the ADT, where this was an overhead door sensor, but I'm getting the same information that I am from the ADT security system. So just getting that report from your ADT security system on your facility doors is going to tell you so much. Change your workflow, change your maintenance, change your everything. I'm not sure that they would share it with you, which is why we're employing these, but you get my point. So think about what you all do when it comes to revenue recognition, lease accounting. If you had a sensor on a piece of equipment while it's going through its workflow chain, you could have gateways wherever you wanted to, and as that piece of equipment moves along, 10% just gets registered in your general ledger. Or if you lease all of these chairs and 342 different Panera Breads or whatever it ends up being, and you want to take an inventory, you hit a button, and in 3 seconds it populates your general ledger. As I mentioned earlier, these internal and external audits are going to be fundamentally changed with the deployment of IoT. And the reason is because it's now becoming, as I mentioned in the word block, time. We have this perfect moment in time when people A, are awake, or they say woke, whatever the terms are. B, the cost for aggregating this information has come dramatically down. And I think that the other barrier is kind of this intangible of, we all now are a little more comfortable with it. Ring's out there, right? Everybody's got Ring. So I'm more comfortable now with this. Now it's owned by Amazon, I think, as well. God, they own everything. Anyway, it's a perfect time. It's a perfect time for you all to be leaders in thought, value add props to your individual enterprises. As I, yeah.
Even though they can afford it now and find a budget for it, they still need somebody to do it.
Yeah, me. Thanks.
That's your,
That was an awesome plug. That's great. That was just like an underhand, right? All right, we're just solid. Yes.
There's a payback for it.
Oh, of course.
So, I mean,
Of course.
in a budget, there's always a.
Always. What we're doing with the IAMC, the Industrial Asset Management Council, a mouthful. They've got, I think it was 75 billion square feet of industrial space underneath this one organization. They've taken the lead as trying to be the white paper industrial use case, call it Cliff Notes, for their industry globally. Hanes Brands, PepsiCo, Anixter, I can go on. They're all deploying these, and they're writing up, if it costs me $17,000 to get all of my sensors up and going, but I changed my maintenance contracts, I'm getting my ROI in 3.5 months. The ROI is staggeringly fast when you start recognizing it. The difficulty is what we talked about earlier, which is the Hawthorne effect. How do you get the ROI on that? There's a rule in our industry, and I'll talk about the real estate industry quickly here. It's called the 330 rule, which means your utilities are $3, your rent is $30, and then your human capital is $300. So it's one thing for you to be focusing on your utilities. We're going to have solar, we're going to have meters on our water meters, and everything like that, right? Well, that's $3. Your rent, we know what that is. That's what we do. It's what we negotiate. We work hard for that, right? Okay. But then if you're opening and closing because you're worried about the utility usage on the doors, but you're not focusing on the human workflow from that door, but you're just focusing on the energy, you're losing what the real meat and potato ROI actually is. I now realize, after censoring out my fork trucks globally, that 32% of them weren't used more than a third of the time last month. So let's wipe them out right now. Get them off the lease, get them off whatever it is, and let's become more efficient because now I'm getting real-time metrics as to how the operation or operations are flowing. Does that make sense? I'm going to have to unfortunately talk faster and faster here. As we just mentioned here, IoT is in the eye of the beholder. I've given you a couple examples already, and I'm about to just give you a couple more that we're doing specifically. We talked about what IoT means to all of you. Smart cities. I don't have to tell you what's going to happen there. Connectivity is going to explode. We had a meeting with a company called Con Ed, they're a small utility out of New York. They had a woman back in 2008 walk across a manhole cover and was eviscerated because it was what they call bleed over electricity underneath there. What did they do in response to that? Take a guess, big utility. We're going to develop a $70 million workforce that drives around the city of New York and each year tests each manhole cover. Now they've got 200,000 manhole covers, so I'm just going to go out on a limb that they're maybe touching one manhole cover a day with their efficiencies. Now I'm being a little exaggerated, but you get the point. So we're working on, why don't you just have a sensor underneath there that regulates the bleed over electricity. You know, you got 7 over here, what's going on, right? That kind of thought process. So smart cities are going to change very, very quickly. We've got situations where the cities are in Europe are literally driving up and down the road, like you see in Google, cars taking photogrammetry. They're laser scanning cities. And that's going to be coming very, very soon as well. You see these on front of trains that I talked about, on top of cars. They're on backpacks. People put them on backpacks and climb throughout all oil rigs. They climb up mountains. Talk about the shear. I mean, they've got wild technology. Again, with SPAR 3D, if you're going to learn more about that technology. Industrial chemical, we're going to get to that here in a second. I'm going to jump down and then jump back. This is a civil suit that was filed in whatever it is, the 5th something district of the EPA, whatever, United States Environmental Protection, Region 5, here we go. We believe we're the first to actually have provided what's called SEP, a supplementary environmental project. I think is what the SEP stands for. I'm not going to know what it means. But this is a chemical company that had 300,000, and I'm going to repeat that, 300,000 samples sitting in a room about half this size, and they needed to rotate and manage that every 12 months. The EPA went in there and said, I don't think that's happening. And they were right. So we came in and said, why don't we put an RFID chip on each one of those so they come off the line, and you know exactly where they are, you know how long they've moved, or if they've even moved, or where they are, what's going on. So this is a significant write-up, Exhibit A, and I'm happy to share this with you if any of you have environmental issues that you're dealing with moving forward. We believe this is one of the first in the country where the EPA is going to utilize IoT as a solution for contaminant. We're measuring hazardous waste, we know where it moves, we know how long it sits, everything that you can imagine in that regard. We're going to go back up here. We just talked about the industrial chemical. Utilities, we have sensors that we're deploying for whether or not a telephone pole is tilting, whether or not the beam on the telephone pole is tilting the other way, and whether or not the recloser, which you all have touched, has dropped and broken. Historically, 56% right now of the United Land Mass is run by rural electrical co-ops, and they have zero visibility when a fuse breaks. Seems really, really inefficient to us. So we said, why don't we beta develop, and this isn't the final, but these are examples of how we were working our way to the final, and examples that I want you to all recognize that if you just think about the problem, don't hesitate in 3D printing the solution. A 14-year-old started this. So that's why we wanted to make sure that you understand that innovation starts with you. Real estate tenants and landlords, I think the advantage on the tenant and landlord side is the first person that deploys the IoT is the one who's going to win. In other words, if the tenant moves in and says, hey, Mr. Landlord, I'm just going to put sensors up on my doors and I'm going to maintain the maintenance, you're going to save tens of thousands of dollars on the landlord. If the landlord sits there and says, I'm going to put the sensors on there, the landlord's going to sit there and say, you're banging the heck out of my 3 doors. I'm going to go and send my property manager out there every single month, and they're going to take pictures of that. You're going to be paying for not only the leveler, but the concrete and the overhead door, and that combined cost of about 75 G's. So with 3 doors, you're going to look at $250,000 plus or minus of an issue if you're not paying attention to it. Again, if the landlord has the information, they're going to get the advantage. If the tenant doesn't, the tenant gets the advantage. Any questions? Assessment rate? No? Okay. Last thing, but not least, we didn't even get here because we had so much fun talking IoT. Oops. The enterprise value. This is what's on the back of your page. We didn't fill in the blanks because you actually have this on the disk that we gave you. We didn't fill this in on your sheet because we wanted you all to actually think about your role in applications. Whether that's lease accounting, revenue recognition, you can go into your environment and let's just say you lease a fork truck, you lease a postage machine, you lease your pallets, you lease your furniture, you lease your racking. You just send a laser scanner in there and you data capture that with a sensor on it, hit a button, and it comes right back into your general ledger. And that deployment, on average, about 100,000 square foot space is about 10 grand. Think about the amount of time for just one person to go around there and physically inventory. Oh, we're short one fork truck. Call Bob. Bob, why are we short a fork truck? Oh, I got to tell you, it's a maintenance. Oh, or it's missing. So we got a real good problem. Sales loves this because sales has the ability very quickly to start showing their world. They use this in, when I say this, it's a combined technology stack. When I showed you earlier the digitization process, where you take and you convert the real world into digital, and then you can overlay that with sensors. Again, I put all of this on the disk, the UBS drive that you have, so feel free to just look at that later, or you can take notes. If we had more time, we were going to do a quick experiment where you all would think about the most unique application in your world, or where you come from. Ultimately, I think, and Susan's here, I don't think she is.
Yeah, I think you have to apply for it.
I don't know. Do I?
Yeah, yeah.
Bar opens at 5.
Did somebody say bars open? Bars open. Good seeing you guys. Party's over. Right? So, I'll take 15 if you guys want to understand how and why and what. So we'll just keep rocking here. The sales people love this stuff because for obvious reasons. If you're a salesperson and you're trying to show like Steve, it's a $25 million lab, how do you do that? It'd be best if you could just jump in there and have your prospect standing in there, opening and closing the drawers and navigating around it. You're in the environment itself. Operations, I don't even have to begin to tell you how operations love this. Any piece of data that comes back from a sensor in a warehouse or any other type of facility, operations in some way, shape, or form is going to touch that for talking about CPI, continuous process improvement. Real estate, the applications in our world are literally endless. As I mentioned earlier, we have a client who wants every man hatch on the roof censored 24/7. If that man door opens in any one of the 34 buildings in Denver, that property manager gets notified 24/7 in the middle of the night. Real estate, you want to talk about dock levelers, you want to talk about overhead doors, you want to talk about fork trucks. Fork trucks, I think, are really one of the most simple and easiest way for you to understand. Are you optimizing your warehouse? This is silly, it's really silly simple. You put this on a couple fork trucks, and by the time, at the end of the month, you get a key signature map as to where these fork trucks have gone on a weekly, daily, monthly basis, and you've got one half of your warehouse in blue and the other half is bright red. Do you think that you're optimizing your warehouse? It's just a simple heat map telling you what's going on. Really simple technology. They're also putting laser scanners on top of fork trucks, and the laser scanners are also now going to be aggregating information on how many pallets are available. Because they have sensors that if it hits something before it goes, 2 or 3 feet, whether it's a 1 or a 2 pick deep, then you know how many what we call pallet positions you have. Another great example is if you have inventory that can get old over time. What if you just put a sensor on a pallet and you knew where that pallet was at all times before it aged? Where's my friend Frank? So sorry, but he had a real world issue just like that. I lose a lot of inventory of balloons because he didn't realize he had a whole stack of balloons in the back of his warehouse. Yes.
Just a quick one. How do you verify the PR, the chip, or whatever sensor is on the right? If someone steals a forklift, so you know it didn't register,
Right.
they put it on a bicycle.
Okay.
How, like, for, you said EPA jar, like these waste chemicals, or whatever. Is there some kind of protocol to say, I put it on this item, and that's how I know?
Well, you're always going to have audits, right? I mean, you can't stop theft. And I know he's not going to stop that. It's not going to stop a criminal mind. But if you have 35 facilities, and in 3 seconds, you get a clear visibility of every asset that you have that's leased and it pumps into your general ledger, like that. And then you just send it out to 3 different locations for your internal and external audits and verify the information. Does that answer? That's how I would perceive it unfolding. Yes.
So I just got an app on my phone that
I love the intro. I just got an app on my phone. This is
tracks my driving to the insurance company.
Sure.
And it rates me. And it's amazing. For 5 seconds, I don't know how it does. And I guess if I turn my phone off, I can't turn it.
Theoretically, but they do.
But why can't you do, I guess you could do that with people. Because in the service business, the biggest cost is labor and issue, at least in my business, or time cards, the web-based time cards. What are you doing with your time? Is anybody ever, is there anything going on in that area? Because labor, quite honestly, that's like law firms.
Sure, I'll give you an example. There's a small company called Experis. You guys familiar with that? Okay. They do construction auditing, big construction auditing projects. They have difficulty because they've got subs that go into construction sites of a high-rise. How do you track that human capital? So we said, well, why don't you put on either their hat or their lapel or whatever it is, a sensor. And you can put a gateway on the top of the building or wherever you want to. And you know how many people walk in, you know who walked in, you know how long they were there, and you can verify their time on the job instantly with the time sheets that are submitted. Or you don't even have time sheets. Your time sheets are
The
this.
goal would be you don't have to. Because that's time we record time now at the end of the day, but nobody does that. Everybody waits till they're due.
Go figure.
So
That answer your question? Or is it like an example of thought process?
Pardon me?
Does that answer your question or something?
Yeah, I mean, that would be big. But I think you have the problem of, it's not just the spatial. You know, I'm working on that, you're a lawyer, I'm working on this matter, I'm working on this, but there's no spatial.
Well, you're never going to be able to measure that. You'll be able to measure what that person is, but you're not going to be able to measure what they're writing or what they're thinking. Because attorneys and or everyone else might say, I was sitting here thinking about your project for 30 minutes, I'm going to bill you for 30 minutes. How are you going to measure it? You can't measure this. Any other questions? Okay, moving on quickly here. We talked about real estate, and the applications are endless. We're working on 100 and some odd different use cases for Prologis. They're measuring everything down to radioactive solar radiation on the rooftops to understand where their warranties are. We've got people like GM that are flying laser scanners over their roofs for the 20-year warranty. The one roof was $18 million. Every December they fly over and they do a thermal reading on an entire roof through the laser scans so that they can keep that warranty going. So real estate has applications everywhere that you can think about. Training, we've talked about that at length throughout here, it's really certain. Maintenance is, I think, going to be one of the first impacted in a very big way. If there were any organizations that are publicly traded purely on maintenance, I'd be shorting them now. Marketing and communications, this is really interesting. Marketing and communications is kind of lumped together, I think, from our world. I know you get bigger and bigger companies and they break them apart, smaller companies, they don't have this field, just the marketing, I guess. But they love this stuff. And the reason they love this stuff, and I'll go back to anecdote, just as a simple example. They're wire and cable, and their HR group and marketing got together and said, well, why don't we just start digitizing our product, our environment, and then we can have our salespeople on the road, we can have our conferences, we can have this. But what they really like about this is this word called cultural momentum. And that means that at some particular point, when an enterprise such as Anixter, which is $8 million a year, competing with Westco and a couple of others, they're kind of hitting this plateau. What do we do next? Where do we increase sales? And what is driving our organization? What's driving our enterprise? And they're focused around IoT at this particular point and a few other technologies that tie in with it. But cultural momentum is something that technology, and specifically these emerging technologies, that can be a good hook and angle for you all to bring to either your current or future employer. People have been throwing that term around at us a lot, cultural momentum. I talked about human resources, that one came from left. We were blown away with that. Environmental health and safety, without saying, this is probably the number one reason that people want to put in IoT out in space. This is your world, Nick, one, right? Yeah. And your space and finance. So if you think about anything that is repetitive, anything that you are trying to track, anything that you have to feel, touch, anything that you think can be automated, a sensor can do it. And it's going to come in a box like that, and in the next couple months you're going to be able to test it. Very, very little dollar and little effort. And not even have to frankly engage with your IT. The reason that you want to stay out of, at this particular point, most enterprises have this stay out of my network type feel. And so we build and we deploy around that, what's called a LoRaWAN network. And that's getting technical. It sounds like I know what I'm talking about, but I don't. It's basically a bandwidth that stands on top of and out of the enterprises network, because IT, from what we've seen and experienced, is the single biggest fiefdom where you can't penetrate unless it's their idea, unless it's, you know, a harmonious, perfect little plug-in that, you know, has $20 billion of insurance from SAP or Oracle. They are, as sad as it is from our perspective, they're the antithesis of innovation, the IT departments. And energy, we talked about energy, this is logical, right? LED, and solar, wind, and everything. But I go back to the metrics of the 330, 300 again. It's one thing to have this if you've got a facility north of the Mason-Dixon line and your gas bills are through the roof, and you understand that this door right next to the smokers lounge for the truckers is open 24/7, and we've got our gas air rotation and our thermostat right there, so we're just blowing hot air all day long. Well, that's $3, right? But what if this told you that your workflow is really messed up? And you could, I don't know, eliminate 2, 3, 5 people. Well, the impact is 10x relative to what the impact is on the energy side. Just by LED, you're hitting about 80 to 85% of what you're going to be able to capture in energy savings. From that point forward, it's managing the LED to be able to bleed out another 5 or 10%. Managing the LED is a very complicated process. That's very difficult. The ROI is still to be determined. What that means is down in building 102 in Ulster, and it's with 750,000 square foot state-of-the-art 3-story conveyor belt distribution facility where we've censored up all of their lights and they get real-time notification on a lot of stuff. Heat, movement, time in one space, everything. But it's really kind of a mess. And it's really kind of a mess because it reminds me of a McKinsey report that came out in 2015, and an oil rig had 30,000 sensors, and they were drawing back millions and millions and millions of data points. In a study at 2018, 17 or 18, they used less than 1% of the data that came back. Yeah. So going back to that concept again of innovation starts with you, and how do you attack this if you're going to attack it? This is considered a success. Just get that sensor out there on the door, on the fork truck, on whatever it is you want to measure. And from there, learn from that, and then grow beyond that. You don't have to be that oil rig with 30,000 sensors and then realize we use less than 1% of that to make decisions. I would highly recommend going to the previous site that I mentioned, Mark Truck, as well as the McKinsey. PwC has some really good stuff on IoT as well. We consult with them also. I think I've covered everything here, and I'll take, it's 5:15, so I'll take 5 or 10 minutes if you guys want, and I can answer any questions, or we can race to the bar. Any questions? We covered a lot of ground. Yeah.
Do you see any big four, or they don't have to be the big four, CPA firms using some of this for something as simple as inventory observation?
Absolutely. Yep.
You know, like either you're trying to see on January 1st, oil contain, how much oil?
They call us to deploy it. They come up with the ideas. That's what I want you all to think about. And then they call it. We're a system integrator. We not only design, we develop, we implement, we test. We're the ones that do it.
So then you do that, but who's the owner then? Is it the
Yeah.
CPA firm or you are?
Well, the CPA's client. Yeah, the CPA's client.
Well, no, maybe I'm missing the point here.
Okay, sure.
I'm thinking more in terms of, as a CPA firm, I have to certify.
Okay.
How do I do that? I have to verify certain things and confirm and so on and so forth.
Okay.
I'm saying, would myself as Ernst, for example, do we own all these sensors that we use one site to another, for example, or do you own it, or do we test the owner?
No, you would architect what the solution is and what you're measuring. Then the client would purchase the sensors, and then you would get the report and then be able to run the report on it. I believe that's what we're talking about. That makes sense. Yeah. Anyone else? Thoughts, bitches, gripes, complaints? I take them all, give down. So, yeah, Paul.
You mentioned something interesting there, and I'm thinking think about it from the perspective of small to mid-sized companies.
Just one thing that's interesting.
Well, no, there's like, I could spend all night, well, that came out.
Oh.
I could talk to you for a long time. But the one thing that's triggering to me is, you said that you're an integrator, so your clients are coming to you with a use case. Right?
Correct.
So how do you turn that around the other way? Because I look at this and I'm saying, it's kind of a, eventually, maybe you have more work than you can handle with the pull concept, but it's gotta be that push, and how do you educate? Because I can think about the cases that I have, and you can tell me, oh, that makes sense, but there's gotta be a lot of cases out there. And
I would think that if we just took a half hour and you broke up in a couple teams at the end of time, you would have 10 use cases per team, easily like that.
so back
That's why we go back to it's in the eye of the beholder. What is it that you're measuring? What is it that you're doing? What is your workflow, your machine? What are you building? Is the inventory sitting in the slot too long? Or whatever it is, you could have sensors there. If it's sitting underneath the slot longer than 30 minutes, you get notified. You know, you have to think about what the flow is. And go on.
So are more of your clients using this as market different, the one that jumped out in the other charts, a market differentiator, or are they using it more as cost savings?
It depends on, they put $4 million into the facility, they want to know what's going on everywhere, right? By the time we finish laser scanning it, HR asked for a copy of it. Their plant manager wanted it because he wanted to train people, versus him walking around 250,000 feet for 4 hours telling somebody where the bathroom is, get in the VR, you know where everything is. Goes then to, I don't know, real estate, right? Once you got a laser scan, now I've got a reference point for all the IoT that I want to put out there. I want my dock levels, I want my overhead doors, I want humidity in my breezeway, I want humidity underneath my water tank. They had a water tank that broke, oh, it just kills me. We were just about to deploy IoT for a smaller facility for them, and we had one go underneath the water tank. And that weekend, the water tank exploded, nobody was there, cost me an extra $75,000 when it leaked into the, they didn't claim their insurance. That's just $75,000 out of my pocket. The solution was a $2 sensor underneath the water heater. The director of facilities was just kicking himself. It was just one of those perfect use cases that could save tens of thousands of dollars.
So that's their internal cost. What I'm thinking is, how do you take this and make this of value to your customer? You see what I'm saying? You want to take it and differentiate your brand. And I'm out on
Differentiate CG?
But yeah, see, that's easy. Differentiate your brand, whatever it might be, to make it easier for them to do business. You see what I'm saying? It's more on the equipment side and
You gotta make it easy. You gotta get them thinking. I've given this, by the way, this is the presentation that we'll be giving about 6 times in different conferences this year alone. It has to be easy. You can't go up there and think that you're gonna pick up the phone and call Cisco Systems and think that you're gonna get something accomplished. They're gonna have a meeting to have a meeting to have a meeting to go talk to you. It just doesn't work that way. You know, speed to market, and again, how do you define success? If you've got one sensor on an overhead door, you've lit up that building already. That's success. Now you can sit there and say, let's get the rest of the doors, boss. I can tell you who's moving, who's doing what, how long is this open. I can tell you, we're gonna have problems with this, this, and this. And what is this telling us? It's just a simple overhead door sensor that costs $3. Steve Richard Ellis is buying the heck out of these sensors. Steve Richard Ellis is a brokerage house, facility management.
So why wouldn't the overhead door company that makes them?
Because they have a fantastic recur business model of maintaining doors.
so the original equipment manufacturer doesn't want to put that on.
No way.
They don't, then they're going to be.
The only way that they're willing to do it is if they change the product they're pushing out to have a sensor that is ubiquitous, that can fit within any different framework.
Right.
Because you're not going to buy that dock leveler if you have to then excuse me, buy their SaaS. The only way that they're going to make up that revenue loss from the maintenance they're doing is if you're paying for their SaaS for real time.
So it's more applicable to what I was talking about there, is a movable asset.
Okay.
Because you want to sell them a service maintenance, you want to know where that is. And then you can tell them, because they're going to come back to me and say, I've got 100 of them, and you know they have 200 of them, and you have this. the rail car example you used, the rail cars, if you identify all the rail cars, you know where everyone is at all the time, so that, besides the preventive maintenance. But when it's a standing, but what happens is, what actually happens is, if there's one on that overhead door, and they're calling you and spending $100,000 on all their facilities for maintenance per year, now if they're predicting their own maintenance, they're gonna cut the cost, so your maintenance revenue is actually gonna go down, if you're the overhead door company. Theoretically.
But that's
Does that
not,
make sense?
that's why the only way that they're gonna be comfortable cutting off the left arm of income, which is a recur income, just to let you know, recur income trades on a multiple of 8 to 12. So you get every maintenance recur contract that has a value of 10x. Selling an overhead door has a value of 1x.
So they're getting, in all reality, if they're selling it on a time and material basis, you're gonna pay way more than if they sell it. And they're gonna come back to you and say, this is my experience, and I have less.
Yeah, and so what we've done with the utility industry, because the line union got really mad at us. The line union was like, get out of here. Like, well, time out, right? I kind of thought that we were gonna be eliminating half the jobs. And my partner Nate was like, you gotta think about this differently. They're gonna be deploying sensors. Tell them that their job's gonna be more important and more valuable, because now they're gonna be responsible for deploying, fixing, testing sensors. I'll give you an example on a farm. The farmers want to know the temperature of the water that the cows are drinking. Goes below 32, they get censored. Went out there, get new water. Goes over 85, 90 degrees, they're not going to drink it. Go out there, get new water. They want sensors on the ears of the cows, so they know where they're migrating. Why are they migrating? Where should we put them? How long have they sat on them? You get a heat map on your farm as to where they've been the whole time. Gate doors, I mean, anything that you can think about will be censored out, and that's one of our business ways.
I think it's, the customer would want the water meter to know when to.
The water sensor.
Hasn't the automobile industry changed? I mean, they've got all kinds of sensors in their engines.
Sensors were in airplanes.
They have changed, so I think the smart suppliers of equipment are gonna change.
Yes.
How far are you considering security? I mean, the airline industry uses it already.
Yeah.
Predicting maintenance,
Yeah.
et cetera,
Yeah.
so shipping spare parts out before the airplane actually lands.
Yep.
But overall, the airline industry has special security set in place, streamlined. But how do you do it if everybody on bus comes up all of a sudden with chips and takes it, implements it somewhere?
Security is a huge issue. It doesn't matter what it is. I mean, the more connected we become, the bigger the security problem is. It's that simple. Yeah. I mean, we have embedded programmers that are recorded constantly for that security concerns. Any other questions before we break? No? Wow. Thank you, man.